Dylan, do you like having all kinds of different toys?
I like fast horse.
Did
No
you
Firefox.
Wait, Dylan,
Firefox.
when did you go up to the farm?
I went to Farmer Grimes.
When was that? Yesterday?
Yeah.
Yesterday?
Yeah, that was yesterday. And
What did you do there?
I went, I did climb up a hay. I went on a tractor.
You went on a tractor?
Yeah, and
Did you drive it?
no, I didn't.
It was back in Little Bend that I saw you.
I met Dylan, I can't even remember what year it was. It was the early 90s, and I was working at the Moon Room, and Beth Chorneau was the house band. And so she would play there every week on Friday and Saturday night, and I became friends with her. And one day she showed up with this cute little son of hers that was going to do the door, and he had this big, tall, lanky sidekick named Dusty. And we immediately became great friends. I mean, it was pretty instant. August of '92 when they first started coming to the Moon Room. Because I know that Dylan pretty soon after that turned 17. Because when we started dating, he was 17.
Okay.
And we dated until he went to School of the Arts. And Beth and I took him to School of the Arts. You know, most of the time that I spent with Dylan was spent sitting on my porch, just having deep conversations. We would just talk about everything, you know, in all different stages of our lives. Yeah, well, Dylan, I mean, he's definitely the kindest person I've ever met. He was really funny. He had a great sense of humor. Kind of gallows humor, like a little dark side.
Yeah.
I've known Dylan, I think Dylan was 15 maybe. He was 14 or 15 when I met him. And we met through a mutual friend was dating someone, and our whole group got together, and Dylan would just show up and ride around in the car with us. So we'd go by Dylan's house, which was near the Career Center. We'd pick Dylan up and go, whatever, smoke cigarettes behind a gas station. We were kind of boring teenagers. And then he and I became very close through meeting Michelle and everyone at the Moon Room. Like I would go with him to the Moon Room because he was doing the door while Beth would play. But yeah, so we've known each other for, I guess, about 30 years. I have lots of memories of Dylan. The one that sticks out a lot to me is after I messed my face up, I was really struggling with it. And we go on this yearly, a group of us go on this trip. We call it the Ultimate Warrior Manpower Retreat, UWMR. Dylan is a founding member of this group. I think we've done 10 of them now over 15 years or so. And the year that happened, 2019, only 4 of us could go. And we decided to go anyway. It was me and Jason Mazzara, Chris Holston, and Dylan. And there's a ritual. I grew up very Christian, even though I'm not at all Christian now. And so Jason Mazzara would say, Darvin, why don't you say the prayer before we'd eat dinner? We'd cook all these steaks and lobster or whatever. We'd cook weird stuff that we'd all just kind of nice food. And I would make the production of saying this like big, important sounding prayer. Father, we hope you bless this food and nourishing our bodies, just like the whole script. This year, even though I'm not religious, it almost was like a real prayer. I started my little prayer shtick and just like completely melted in the middle of it, just weeping. And Dylan was sitting next to me. He was right here. We're at this table in some Airbnb. And this is a very Dylan thing to do, and it's it sticks in my memory because it's such a Dylan thing to do. And he would do it after, if you had an argument with Dylan, we would quibble about something stupid, and then Dylan would be the one that would apologize, even when I was wrong. He'd just be the first person to say, and he would do it. He'd put his hand on your shoulder. It was just a very Dylan move, and it was like a firm, strong grip, you know. And it was very loving. It wasn't like a controlling thing. It wasn't like, hey, listen. It was like a loving, you know, touch. And he put his hand on my shoulder when I was weeping. I thought about it a lot because, you know, we're all grieving. What I wish I had was a Dylan. I'm not putting that really well, but maybe you'll understand what I'm talking about. The positives of knowing someone alone means that you're never not going to know them. I mean, now I don't have access to Dylan, but I still know him. He's always going to be a part of my life. That's the kind of family that's really important. So that's that's my memory. That's my memory of Dylan.
When I think about Dylan, I see his heart as a space holder. He held space for his friends, family, and anyone that needed to be heard. He was truly magic. My early friendship with Dylan consisted of mostly photo sessions we arranged and him attending my yoga classes early in my teaching. In our sessions, Dylan's magic was evident. He was able to curate a space where my deepest layers were visible, and I was able to be completely and utterly myself. Dylan could make you feel like you were the most beautiful person in the room, and he saw beauty in everyone. I am one of the lucky ones that got to experience his love. He will forever be one of the great loves of my life. And our time together was spent in deep conversation about his childhood, his family, friends, our children, art, food, and music. I feel like we were connected through music and art and so much more. I will miss being held by him. His hugs were everything. His bright and brilliant smile and the light in his eyes. His love of making homemade pasta with an unlit hand-rolled cigarette hanging from his mouth with that rickety pasta maker and serving up some aglio e olio spaghetti and olive oil. He carried his camera everywhere, and I am sure if Nick developed some of his film from the past few years, you would find a gift for pretty much everyone in his life, especially his children. I will never forget the love he had for his children.
Dylan was an amazing artist. He was a wonderful photographer. I loved his photography, but I knew him first as a painter, and I think he always kind of considered himself an oil painter first and foremost, even though really everything creative that he delved into, he just worked and worked to study it and to master it and to become as proficient as he could. Dylan is one of the most memorable individuals, I think I'll ever meet. Everyone is different, everyone has their own style, but Dylan made sure that you knew he had his. And I love that about him. He had a refined sense of style that usually was rooted in some kind of artisan's palette, and just he loved craft. Dylan adored his family. He his kids were the world to him, and he would always, when it was just he and I, he would come over and hang out. He would always talk about Aiden and Ethan and Benny, and just tell me what they're into, what was happening in their lives, and the funny things that that he got to experience with them, or just the cool things that he was getting to experience with them. He was kind-hearted, gentle, empathetic, and was just there for you. Nothing was off limits. I mean, you could talk to Dylan about anything.
He also went to School of the Arts, so we had that connection. So we had some of the same teachers. He helped me with some pretty major projects, like when we installed the first exhibit at the Beckler Museum.
Any particular memories that?
He taught me how to change a diaper.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, he was a wealth of fatherly advice, especially when David was little. Well, I think part of like him being a good father, and it's one of the things that, like, if I was going to describe him, is his patience. Anytime I was painting, we'd always be on the phone together. What paints are you using? What pigments are you using? What kind of palette knife are you using? Just the real, like the technical stuff of painting. He had a wealth of knowledge. And what's interesting to me is he was primarily self-taught. I mean, he had those 2 years at School of the Arts, and then he pretty much was out on his own.
My name is Charla, and I've been Dylan's friend for a really long time and got the honor of being his girlfriend over this last year. Before I started dating Dylan, I'd never really had a healthy relationship. I definitely had never been in love before. And I remember saying to Dylan one night, I don't know about this. I don't know if I'm cut out for this. I'm just even wondering if I'm lovable. And he stopped and he called me Char, and he said, Char, I want you to hear this. You are easy to love. That simple. That beautiful, simple wisdom that Dylan always had. What a beautiful message. It's a message that I've gone on to share with so many clients since then, that needed to know that, needed to hear that. And that's one of the most important gifts that Dylan ever gave me, was that message.
The last week we had with him down at the beach, one of the outstanding memories I have is Dylan with my granddaughter Lillian, our little redhead up there. And she's just cozied up right next to him. And he's on his phone, and he's giving her an art history lesson. She's 6. And he was saying, now this guy right here, now he was really famous for his big eyes. He would put big eyes on all of his subjects. And then you could see him, swipe over, and he would go into the next. This guy right here was, and she was just mesmerized. And it really became evident just how good he was with kids. And then with Coulter, I was holding Coulter, and Coulter was like that cat down there, just don't hold me. I want to go back to Dylan, I want to go back to Dylan. So he really, he had a knack for kids, and he had a knack for really beautiful renditions of his subjects. It was Ethan and Benny and Aiden and Dylan and Beth and I. And we started talking. We knew they were leaving the next day. And Beth just started going around, and I think Benny said he liked the arcade and the ocean. And Ethan was talking about how much fun it was to ride that bike, they had rented. Aiden said he liked playing cards. And Dylan got this funny look on his face, and he said, the best thing about this is family. All of our family is together, and on both sides, and all the kids were together. And he said that was the best thing of the whole week. that was an important moment because Beth and I both noted that he said that it was family.
What a delightful child he was. And it's really interesting because I look at pictures now of his son Ben, and Ben looks a lot like Dylan as a really young guy. I used to volunteer at a school when he was in kindergarten, and I'd bring my guitar and play these crazy songs, and I didn't find out till later that he was super embarrassed and shy of me doing that, just like, the kindergarten teacher, Mrs. Johnson, saying, okay, Dylan, go give your mom a kiss, and Dylan was just like, anything but that. But he endured that. We had a lot of great adventures growing up in San Pedro, in the harbor town, and he was my sidekick. Dylan will be missed so dearly, and his touch too. He would do a thing where he would just every once in a while just come over and just kind of pat me on the back, and it was so heartfelt. He didn't have to say anything, but it was deeply felt. He had a lot of responsibility at a really young age, taking care of you. And he never complained. He never complained about stuff. He just knew that's the way it was. And I do remember him doing one kind of mean thing to you. It's funny mean, but he would read you a story before bed. And I heard him do it one time, and apparently he did it often, but he would have the book open, Curious George, or The Muffin Man, or The Gingerbread Guy, or whatever. And so he'd read that first page, like Sam I Am, the Green Eggs and Ham. He'd read like 2 pages, and they go, the end. And I remember you going, Mom, Dylan didn't read the book. I don't know if you remember this, but he lived in that little art studio in the backyard, and you would get up and you'd be looking out the window, and I'd say, what are you doing? And he'd go, wait, just wait, Mom, he's almost out. And I go, what? And then Dylan would open the door to come out into the house, and you go, watch Dylan now. And so Dylan, it'd be freezing cold. He'd be in his boxers and a sweatshirt and barefoot, and he'd be like running on those little steps running to get into the house while it's freezing cold.
Can be free, sometimes brave.